Hey everyone, Casella here. Before we get going, I just wanted to extend a really big thanks to everyone who contributed to ARB's fundraiser or helped us spread the word. The magazine and the podcast have a lot of exciting things coming up because of you. Thanks again so much. Okay, on to the show. A critic is a creature who has views quite like a camel's. Flowers and fruit he scorns. In the flower garden of the honeyed muse, he starves unless he finds a meal of thorns. Hello, and welcome to A Meal of Thorns, a critical book club from the Ancillary Review of Books. I'm Jake Casella Brookins. Each episode, we ask a critic, a scholar, a reader of some kind, to pick a book and talk us through what's so speculative about it after all. What it's saying well or poorly, what it points to. Today we are talking about Dempow Torishima's Sisyphean, and I am delighted to have Gareth Watkins here to discuss. You can find Gareth's writings on politics and culture at places such as New Socialist, the Los Angeles Review of Books, New Statesman, Vulture, and more. He is also one of the hosts of the illustrious Death Sentence podcast. Gareth, thanks so much for joining. How are you?
Good. Many adjectives could describe Death Sentence. I don't think illustrious is ever going to be one of them. I think we talk about anime way too much to deserve illustrious, but thanks anyway.
What would be the opposite of illustrious? Something
depraved. I'd go with depraved. Possibly just loud. We kind of aim for being one of the loudest literary podcasts around.
Yeah, loud's good. Thanks so much for being here. Before we dive into this book, which was a very cool selection, and I might have seen this on a list or something somewhere once, but I had never seen anyone really talk about it. It hadn't really stuck in my brain, so I'm really glad you picked it to focus on. But before we get into it, have you been reading, or for that matter, watching or playing or working on anything else that's cool?
This is kind of shading into the plugs pit, but I've been writing a book for about the past year or so. That has meant a lot of my reading has to be basically laser focused on the topics of that book. Mm-hmm. The book is about the right wing. That means my Amazon algorithm thinks I'm a Nazi now, and I'm sure I've got some of the stuff I've had to download for this one. I'm on a list. I'm on many lists right now. They're probably very confused about my political trajectory. So luckily, I got to read a very good book quite recently called Muskism, as in Elon Muskism, by Quinn Slobodian and Ben Tarnoff. Quinn Slobodian is just a massive fanboy of his. He's like one of the best political writers around. He's just kicks out. He's written 3 books on neoliberalism, which probably going to mention in relation to Sisyphean. And Muskism is like a collaboration between him and Ben Tarnoff, who I think is, I don't know as well, but he's a journalist. And this is basically saying, okay, let's take Elon Musk seriously. Let's think of him as a political thinker. What is Muskism as an ism? It's really fascinating. Like I know a lot about this stuff. It's very much one of those the best kind of books are the books that tell you what you already know kind of things. Mm-hmm. I'm not showing off that I know a lot about Elon Musk because I wish I didn't. But I do understand a lot of the cultural references that he gets because he's a big sci-fi guy. But yeah, it's very interesting to think about Elon Musk that way because he is just kind of a huge joke as a person, but to think of him seriously is really interesting.
Well, so 2 thoughts there. One is that it is super interesting. I know when I read any kind of work that isn't fiction, I either don't know anything about it, so it's sort of hard to read critically sometimes, because I'm like, I don't have the grounding to read it. But when there's stuff that I already know, you're right, that sort of that pleasure of reading stuff you already know, but that's also where I can argue with a book. Like when they, I'm either changing what I think a little bit and noticing that I'm changing, or I'm being like, I don't think you got that 100% right and I can think about it more. So those are kind of more interesting. That's just a weird thought. But the Musk thing, it's so strange that I feel like there's such a kind of rejection, not everywhere, but a lot of people reject the sort of great man theory of history now, right? It's sort of like a less popular automatic assumption that that's how history works. But the flip side of that is this weird way that we treat these huge influential people as aberrations, right? That Musk and Trump and whoever, they're just kind of like these like weird one-off flukes, and not thinking about them seriously in a way. So that's interesting to take him seriously. Yeah.
He is definitely a heir to a lot of quite obscure and also quite mainstream thought. He didn't just fall out of a coconut tree. He is the product of a history and a product of South Africa as well. I mean, South Africa really made and molded him, and other people like Peter Thiel. But the PayPal mafia, that was a South African thing more than a Silicon Valley thing. Kind of the main villain of my book is Peter Thiel by a long shot, because he's just more intelligent than Musk, obviously. So he has more to chew on with him. Although, having heard a lot about his Antichrist lectures, I'm kind of reassessing whether he is actually that smart. He doesn't seem to quite understand a lot of things. He gets like the plot details of One Piece wrong. It's can't really respect you after that.
This is way too big an aside. We can't get into it, but I do think it's fascinating how we just don't have intelligence defined very well at all.
Yeah, I feel like we think intelligence is like emptiness in a glass. You pour in water and there's less stupid in there and there's more intelligence. I think you can be incredibly stupid and also incredibly intelligent. Like Slavoj Žižek, massively intelligent guy, incredibly stupid. I think Peter Thiel could probably talk all day about René Girard and Carl Schmitt and stuff like that. But he's also a really dumb guy. He is not smart at all. He's not... he's capable of synthesizing these very difficult thinkers, but also... And is obviously a brilliant businessman, but he is an incredibly stupid person. That interview he did with Ross Douthat on New York Times. Yeah. I noticed a thing about him in interviews. He's got like a 15-minute limit to how far he goes before he completely falls off. Like he's very coherent in his first 15 minutes. Then it's just madness. That's where he starts talking about the Antichrist. Yeah, look at the interviews of him. Maybe he gets worse over the years. I should write this all down and do crunch the numbers. But yeah, interesting guy. Very stupid, very smart.
Let's leave these current monsters to the side for right now and jump into these much stranger ones. So today we are talking about Dempow Torishima's book Sisyphean, which it's either a collection or a kind of mosaic novel, kind of depending on how you look at it. The book grew out of Torishima's Sogen Prize-winning short story of the same name. It was originally published in Japan in 2013, and we're discussing Daniel Huddiston's translation to English from 2018, published by Haikosoru. The book gives us these ambiguously connected slices of some kind of far future where humans and maybe other organisms are colonizing interstellar space and undergoing extreme biological and cultural evolution. It has elements of biopunk, body horror, bizarro, and the weird. And it's something of a challenging read, though I'd say a very entertaining one. I really, really enjoyed this read. I should also mention it's illustrated throughout by the author with these sort of dense, atmospheric, ambiguous, like pencil-y sketches that I'm kind of showing how little I know about art here. But I was thinking about like Geiger like a little bit, though they're a lot less mechanical. And they're a lot less sort of final. They have this interesting sort of like roughness to them that Geiger doesn't. Or Giger. Is it Giger? Anyways, that's the book. As I was saying beforehand, I had seen this on some lists here and there, but I'd never really seen anyone talk about it. It hadn't really like stuck in my brain until you recommended reading it. I enjoyed the heck out of it. So Gareth, tell me a little bit about your relationship with this book, why you wanted to talk about it, kind of like, view from way up high, why you thought this was interesting.
Sure. Yeah, I think I was in the same boat as you for years with this. It got name dropped here and there in big lists of crazy sci-fi you should read and so on. I think I saw Jeff VanderMeer talk about it at some point. And I don't read everything that gets recommended to me, so it just passed me by. Then in a quite early episode of Death Sentence, Langdon Hickman, who is like the heart of the show, he is an incredibly smart person. He said, "You want to check this out? It's a Japanese novel. I'm not a literary weeb by any stretch, but I do love a lot of a lot of Japanese writers. And I've never really come across it before because I think because it was published by Haikosoru, which is an imprint of Viz Comics. So the people you're going to get manga and anime from. And they do like a very small number of translations. It's usually stuff like Battle Royale, stuff that you'd know.
Mm-hmm.
The original novel of Battle Royale, things like that. But they also published like a handful of previously untranslated like classics. None of Dempow Torishima's other work has ever been translated. It was often thought that Sisyphean is untranslatable. Maybe it is, for all I know. I personally am of the opinion that Daniel Huddleston did an incredible job translating this. He's like, there's a lot of push towards having translators be a bit more on the marquee of books nowadays, and yeah, he really deserves his name like right up there with Torishima's, because the amount of work he would have had to put in for this, the amount of like portmanteaus and wordplay and stuff, it is crazy. So yeah, I read it. I had no idea about it. I knew it was a mosaic novel. I knew it was 4 parts. I knew there was some kind of Kafkaesque part in the first part, and then I was like, holy shit, what is going on here? Like, it is. I wouldn't say it's difficult exactly. It's written very plainly. It's very straightforward to read. It's not Finnegan's Wake by any means. But it feels like thick. It's like walking through mud or treacle. Like it's 400 pages long. It's obviously broken into parts, so you can do one part in an evening. But it feels like you're pushing yourself. I don't. There are a lot of novels that have that same quality, like the Deloriad by Missouri Williams. That's like 250 pages, and it takes like 8 weeks to read because it's just so it feels thick. And again, you can't peg that on the prose itself, because the prose is straightforward, goes from thing to thing. It's not doing any tricks. It's not really stylish in any way. But it's just like there just seems to be this like resistance to you getting from one page to another. And a lot of people are going to bounce off this book for that exact reason. I think that's going to be the number one reason why people, if they do pick it up after listening to this, I think a lot of people are going to be 10 pages in and be like, how did an hour elapse between me opening this book? And it's hard. It's a hard one, but I think it's a rewarding one.
It's so interesting because I had the exact same experience. And there was a point where like, because I kind of know, roughly how fast I read. I kind of like, between doing the podcast and reviewing and stuff, I kind of like know like, okay, in the next couple of weeks I need to read, this stack of books. And I kind of roughly know how long that's going to take me. And I was like, yeah, this book's 400 pages long. I'll read it in like 2 or 3 days. And then when I was noticing how long it was taking me, I like stopped and looked. I was like, why is it taking me so long?
I know, right?
I think one of the things is that it's a really, really, really inventive book, right? There's each individual story is kind of in a totally new place where you don't really know how the rules work. You don't really know like what things look like. They have different tones. They have different perspectives. And none of it is weird to any of the characters. Even though you have like these like 30-foot tall amoebas wearing like a meat suit shaped like a human, and you have the whole big chapter that's sort of like a private investigator, but with giant humanoid bugs that are doing lots of weird stuff. Even though like the last chapter, I don't know, it doesn't come out and say, but it has this very like almost like post-human, like nanotech / VR stuff going on where things are shifting. But no one within those worlds thinks any of that's particularly strange. So it's all presented just very flatly. I think that's part of it, just because you're sort of having to do imaginative work that the characters aren't, just kind of piece together what's happening, I think is a lot of it. I kept having to just set it down and be like, wait a second, what does that actually mean? But in a way, yeah, I found very enjoyable.
World building is like a constant debate in sci-fi fantasy. You get on the one side, your Brandon Sandersons, your Bando Sandos, who you love your 10 different species of elf or whatever, and big histories stretching back to the first age of men and so on. And you get other people like M. John Harrison, who hates world building, hates the whole idea of world building. There's a very good essay by M. John Harrison in his blog about why he hates world building and why he considers it quite regressive for fantasy as a genre. And his books are, they have worlds, they're consistent worlds, they're not just random stuff happening for no reason, but he doesn't need you to know who was king 50 years ago. He says a lot of stuff without ever defining it, and you just kind of pick it up. Whereas Sisyphean, I think, sits really in the middle, where there is a ton of world building. There is a lot of explanation of what these things are. It's not just given to you. Like, I know what a Mamonji is. I could draw one. I know how many legs it has, how many eyes it has. I know roughly what it does, because its function changes from novella to novella. Because Torishima will actually say, this is what it is, this is what it does, this is what it means to the people in the world. It'd be like someone in a realist novel saying, I sat down in front of a television. A television was a square device that showed me pictures.
Yeah,
there actually is a television in Sisyphean. Yeah, it sits in a really kind of awkward place in the middle, where it doesn't go into either of those modes. So you are constantly having to pick up on this new information and integrate it with the other information you have, and do a lot of the legwork there yourself. You can't just ignore things the way you can in Harrison's work, but you're also not given so much that you've got all the blocks there before you set out in front of you, like you would in Sanderson, or going back even further, Tolkien. Yeah, it's just in that really awkward space where it just creates friction. Again, it's going to be a love or hate thing. It's very Marmite. Oh wait, you don't have Marmite in America. Marmite is a substance people either love or hate in Britain and I believe Australia.
I agree. Well, not about Marmite, but about that friction here. And what's interesting about it, like thinking of it as, because it's not, I don't think on its own terms it's failing at what it's trying to do.
Oh no, I think it knows exactly what it wants to do.
But because it does feel like a failure approached from either of those modes, right? Either like no world building or complete world building. And that ties in so nicely to the way that each of the four sections have these people who kind of just know their immediate circumstances and don't really know the bigger picture. And they're not really trying to piece together the bigger picture, right? Like each of the four sections, people kind of have their own sort of more limited goals that they're trying to do. While you, the reader, are trying to do this other thing of this, like, where did they come from? How did we get from point A to point B to point C to point D? How did this all fit together? But that's not something they're trying to do. I've been thinking a lot about the sort of more broader concept of just getting comfortable that you'll never be really familiar with the big picture. You know what I mean? That like the idea that you can know the big picture of anything is kind of like a weird fallacy. And that's why we get like all these sort of like big, dumb, explain everything history kind of books, right? Like I've been thinking about Jared Diamond, unfortunately, a lot this week. And not even like dismissing or attacking him too much, but just sort of like acknowledging the seductiveness of that kind of thing where like, I've got this idea that a fairly unintelligent person can understand and it explains everything. And we want those, right?
There's this guy on YouTube. I'm lowering the mental level here, but a guy called Professor Jiang. He will probably come up in your YouTube algorithm given enough time. He's not a professor. He's got a BA. He's a high school teacher in Beijing, I think. And he's a very seductive thinker because he believes he's independently developed psychohistory from the foundation, yeah. And which some people refer to what he does as game theory, but again, it's not actually that. Game theory is a subset of mathematics, and he doesn't do that at all. He kind of draws people in by these like predictions of the future based on his psychohistory. He's gotten some predictions right. He was right about Donald Trump winning the election 2024, I believe. He was right about the US invading Iran. Those, I could have guessed that if I was inclined to. It's like a 50-50 chance of guessing who wins the election. And the US has been wanting to invade Iran for ages. Mm-hmm. And then he uses this very seductive, if you follow my methods and watch me draw on the blackboard thing, you're going to understand the grand sweeping arcs of history thing. And then he does Holocaust denial. It always ends up there, doesn't it?
Really does. Oh.
He also doesn't believe that the Roman Empire happened, really, that according to histories. It's a kind of like weird new chronology, but for the Roman Empire.
Oh, is that the one where they think like there's another culture that made all the big buildings around the world?
Oh, that's what's that called?
What's that one called?
That's the one, the Mud Flood, which is very Sisyphean. Tartaria.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, I got a lot of those on TikTok for about a week. My algorithm just went all weird. But it's kind of like his own spin on things where Roman Empire didn't happen. He's a very odd guy, but like you say, that idea of a big overarching explanation for everything, like you'd get in a Brown and Sanderson or Tolkien, is seductive to a certain type of reader, a certain type of person. It's someone like Harrison, who's very, very left-wing, would see an almost fascist impulse in that, which then gets borne out by someone like Jiang, who wants to use it to smuggle in anti-Semitism into psychohistory for some reason. I'm just calling it psychohistory. Man got no shame.
That's really funny. And another weird point that, again, we don't have time to get into, just about how the imaginative tools of science fiction are I don't even want to say co-opted, but so easily used for a lot of these sort of totalitarian grifts. That's wild. What are we talking about? Seductive theories, talking about mud, talking about, no overarching theory for this. Well, again, like that, I'm a big science fiction reader. I really enjoy far future stuff, especially like just stuff that's really like swinging big and trying to be like, we're really going to go, 4,000, 10,000, 20,000 years, whatever in the future, and really kind of play that through a little bit. And so I'm like primed to figure out how these piece together, right? And I have some ideas, but they're not, I don't have that Tolkien timeline and, lineage kind of thing going on.
I know the fourth book in this is the earliest in chronological time. The other three, no idea. Yeah, like Hanashibe from the second book appears in the fourth quite briefly, but that's like an earlier incarnation of him. It's not the one we meet in part 2. I know they're basically on a very large spaceship, like a generation ship, and each of the parts is set in a different kind of biome on that spaceship. I know the Mamonji are kind of like seeds to seed life on other planets, but the rest I honestly can't tell you, and honestly that's fine. I like these weird freaks having their little adventures, and then it stops, and then another weird freak comes along and they have an adventure.
I like that when things show up between the stories, they're not like Easter eggs, like, aha, it makes sense now, but like when the canvassers, which are like big giant robot things, like show up in multiple places, but they seem to be doing very different things than different stories, or when you have the characters that recur, or some of the creatures that recur, it doesn't feel like it's explaining it or like, aha, I've identified, that elf was in this book in Tolkien and he's shown up again here. It's not that kind of feeling. It just sort of gets on this idea of like playing over on these themes with like intense variations kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Which I think the reincarnation is such a big thing here. And I do not have the theological religious studies background to say anything about that. But I did find it really fascinating, this idea of recurrence and sort of trying to find yourself again. This, you mentioned Kafka. I was thinking about Philip K. Dick through a lot of this, where you have a lot of characters who are really concerned with what the real situation is or who they really are, but it sort of like muddles and moves in strange ways. Like there are people who are, in the Castellum Natatorius, the castle in the Mud Sea, which I love, which is just like this enormous, like city-sized, like snail with all these bugs living in it, and one of the bugs is like a private eye, basically.
Yeah, it's like SpongeBob Noir.
It really is. But like they like physically crack the back of his head open and like move stuff around in his brain like multiple times, right? Like he's taking all of these weird like mind-altering chemicals throughout it, but he's trying to figure out something real. He's trying to figure out something real about himself. And a lot of the characters in the different sections kind of have that in this way that I found like really poignant and also like very funny in the way that PKD often kind of is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm like a lot of people, a big Philip K. Dick fan. I wrote my graduate dissertation on him. Huge fan. But so it's just kind of like his sort of paranoid worldview is kind of background noise to me right now. So I almost didn't really think of him related to this because the aesthetics are incredibly different.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't be more different. His kind of like Southern Californian kind of very suburban aesthetic that he has in things like Scanner Darkly or something like that. Mm-hmm. My favorite of his books.
Yeah.
It couldn't be more different from the kind of H.R. Geiger-esque gooey,
so gooey
exoskeletal. Yeah, it's a really goopy book.
Giant piles of garbage.
Yeah,
like
disgusting.
A rain of mostly dead creatures that falls for like weeks and like crushes whole towns.
No. Have you ever seen Mad God?
You know, just from the trailer, I can see this having a similar kind of aesthetic.
So, yeah, that's probably the thing that's, in terms of pure vibes, closest to Sisyphean, while still not getting anywhere close, because I think Sisyphean is a very singular thing.
To get very SF, I was thinking a little bit about some of the more extreme kind of like bio-punky stuff. Like I was thinking, I don't know if you know Cameron Hurley's The Stars Are Legion, which is like, it's all inside like this giant 100% biological generation ship where like if I'm remembering correctly, like all of the creatures within it are some version of human. So like the creatures you hunt to eat are one version of human and the technology uses like a different human that does something. So it had some of that kind of feeling. And I was thinking about, have you read any Volodine's stuff?
I've had Radiant Terminus on my bookshelf for probably like 5 years now. Everyone I know who I respect tells me to read it, and somehow I never get around to actually reading it.
I was thinking a lot of Cree, which is, you know, in quotes, Manuela Draeger. I don't quite know how all the sub-personalities fit together for that, but...
Very Sisyphean as well.
Yeah, but that's a book about, like, reincarnation, and it's a very... I'm going to say this. The reincarnation in Cree, much like how stuff works here, it's fascinating because it is, like, explicitly a religious or theological concept, right? I mean, we have, like, Shinto temples in Sisyphean, right? Like, and they have a framework for how it works. But the actual process of it, and again in Cree, is intensely physical. It's never divorced from the fact that these are like biological bodies and corpses and piles of things rotting and trying to like revivify things, right? And trying to bring people back to life who are like deliquescing in front of you. So it has this like intense, almost like body horror level of awareness of that, while also continually talking about this like sort of vaguely spiritual idea, which I don't know, it clicks together here in a really interesting way.
Yeah, I mean, the second book, Cavernville, the main character in that, Hanshibe, is he becomes a priest. It's kind of like a Bildungsroman about a guy doesn't really know what he wants to do with his life. He becomes a priest of this Shinto adjacent religion. It doesn't have that kind of like very beautiful, spare aesthetic of Shintoism. It's about, yeah, like you said earlier, raining corpses from the ceiling. Mm-hmm. And some of those corpses are Mamonji, and they have babies inside them, which could be your dad. Mm-hmm. So one of the sub characters has to raise his own father from being a baby.
There's a scene where they so this pile of corpses has fallen down and like crushed things, and they go to one of the corpses and they cut it open, and there's a monkey inside, and they like pat it on the back, and the monkey goes, "Oh, who am I?" And it's just like, that's just a normal day. It's a normal day here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
I'd love to see this filmed somehow. It would need a budget of trillions, but or just be an anime. But I'd love to see this visually.
I don't even know how to begin to read this book kind of politically, but there was so much that was kind of jumping out to me. Do you? Okay, good. Well, in the first section, Sisyphean, with the worker and the president, who's this sort of like nameless character, that I think is in a lot of ways the most horrific of the four. It's also kind of the funniest in a weird way. It's just kind of about how bizarre and nonsensical and degrading work is, and how your boss is this big, giant, incompetent alien thing that's like physically crushing you and sucking your organs out. And it's pretty great. But it's brilliant. But in the second one, in Capenville, Hanishabi's like weird turn, and like what it means to sort of like, I don't know, kind of betray the principles that everyone has to try to make his peace with what's happening. It's a really strange kind of thing. And then that he recurs. Anyways, you had this figured out. Tell me what you figured out.
So I don't want to do like Scooby-Doo critique here. where we pull off the mask and, oh, look, it's mean old Mr. Capitalism behind it. I think it is a deeply anti-capitalist novel. In some ways that are very obvious, like the fact that these creatures are sometimes referred to as like corporations. Oh God, what's the word they have for workers in the first?
Subordinates.
Subordinates.
That's so good.
Yeah. So there's some very obvious like kind of like Office Space level critique of capitalism here, but I think the deeper level is so a little bit of like background here. So Torishima was an illustrator before he started writing, and he was quite old when in writing terms when Sisyphean the short story came out. He's about probably in his mid-40s, so it's hope for all of us yet. And he had been in a kind of, if you know anything about like Japanese office culture, it is really anti-human. It's very much doesn't care for the normal psychological or even physical human needs. And it's deeply hierarchical, and something like what you see in Sisyphean, the short story, is kind of the standard. It's I think like office worker in Japan would very much understand that as being their boss and their work day. But I think what's most big P political about it is this office comedy is happening thousands or millions of years in the future on a generation ship hurtling through space to seed other worlds with weird Cronenberg creatures. And again, it also recurs in Cavernville, in a different part of that spaceship, a different biome there. All this stuff from 20th century Japan keeps recurring and recurring and recurring throughout all of time. It's like the whole world just stopped in I forget what the periods are called in Japanese history, but like it just stopped in the 2000s in Japan when this book was being written. So there's a part in Sisyphean short story where the worker is injured and has to go see a doctor, and a doctor kind of speaks exactly how a medical professional from 20th century Earth does. He talks about resting up, having lots of fluids, getting lots of sleep. And the worker can't physically do these things because he sleeps in a gross fleshy sack and is regurgitated every morning. He doesn't get like a minute of free time. He's being like pushed around by this horrible creature all day doing these meaningless tasks, and then eventually the world ends. Or he becomes one of the bosses. The whole of the material reality of the world has irreparably changed, but capitalism hasn't. You still, it's that old Twitter joke about the world's ending, but you still have to go to work. And here the world is always ending. It ends several times in the novel, and yet everyone still has to go to work. Hanashiba goes to a Japanese high school you've probably seen in like 50 different animes. The fourth book is about a cattle drive, like you've seen in 1,000 westerns. The third is, like you say, about a private detective caricature you've seen in every single Raymond Chandler book. Except he's a giant bug. Maybe he's not a giant bug. Maybe he's a regular-sized bug. We don't know, because the whole of the world is so utterly different, and yet he still has to buy things. He buys things with the shells of people who died. Some of the shells belong to people he knows, like his ex-wife. A bit of her could be like the money in your pocket at some points. But it's still money. You still got to have money. You still got to pay the rent. And it kind of mirrors the way contemporary Japan and now the rest of the world, capitalism just stalled. In Japan in like the lost decade of like the 90s, 2000s, but now everywhere. It's just stopped. It stopped being a vital force at all. The world has moved on. We need something else, but we're still going to our dumb office jobs. It's that kind of Gramscian idea of an interregnum, that we're between these 2 points, and we're kind of stuck between these 2 points. Capitalism is is played out at this point, and we're just stuck before the other thing starts, and we've been stuck there for about 150 years now. In the interregnum, as Gramsci says, a whole host of morbid symptoms appear, which is kind of why there's so much like dirt and cancer and garbage around these places, because they're supposed to have moved on by now, and they never do. That's true of all of them, and they are seemingly going to other planets in order to seed not life but capitalism. The like interstitial bits between the stories make it kind of clear that this isn't about spreading the light of consciousness around the universe. It's about primitive accumulation, making more markets in alien worlds.
It's like a joint capital venture. Like
the individuals are described as corporations, and I think Geo, the worker in the first one, eventually becomes a corporation. He becomes not just a boss, but after he becomes a boss, he becomes this like sentient capitalist entity. It's all very Nick Land. I hate to bring up Nick Land because he's a monstrous fascist, worse than any in this book, but it's all very like capitalism just has taken on this like horrible Lovecraftian thing where it's just like stuck forever, and it's just digesting everyone, but then brings them back eternally. And it's in this like eternal recurrence that isn't like a good eternal recurrence like Nietzsche. It's like eternal recurrence like you've got to do your job tomorrow.
A dark auto-cannibalistic sort of god. Yeah. The bit with the money was so good because it's the money that is made from the dead. And again, one of those things with the perspective working so well, because everyone there is just like, oh, it's so nice. I might get to see you again. I might use you to buy a drink.
Hold you in my pocket.
Yeah.
I'll put you in a vending machine one day.
But that whole story, and to some extent all the four stories, are about just using other bodies and other minds to this. It's such a straightforward allegory, but it's like cranked up so high that it actually takes you a while to see it as you're reading it, right? And it has all of these little, I loved all the little threads through it of like, who do we consider a person or not?
The Namus Machina.
The Namus Machina, which are little bugs that totally talk. And everyone's like, it's just a weird reflex, don't worry about it. As we're like grinding them up to eat them because they're addictive.
Yeah, that's very evocative of. It made me instantly think of the kind of very silly is ChatGPT conscious arguments we have right now. Consciousness is something we dole out very arbitrarily. Like the Namus Machina in the book are basically a kind of drug, a bit like heroin but hallucinogenic, that the main the character in that thing is addicted to. He also gives birth to a litter of them later. He finds out his wife is a female Namus Machina, and they are considered conscious. That the males aren't. They're just like these little. It's a sexually dimorphic species. If you eat one of the males, you get high. At one point, there's this probably most disturbing to me scene in the book where the detective kind of uses his own children, who are these like little tiny bugs, as kind of like to kind of probe at the mystery he's trying to solve. And it kills them, like one after another. He's got a lot of them, but they're still like his children, and he names them, and they talk in these really like cutesy accents to him. And they're obviously conscious. Kind of feeding your own children to a wood chipper just to see what happen. And he keeps doing it, and they come back like horribly mutilated and then die. But he's like, well, yeah, these are consumer products. It's like throwing a can of Coke in the bin. Yeah, and that's obviously repeated at like these meta and like mega levels where that's just your life. If you're a detective or a cattle rustler, then you get used up, you come back again, you maybe have a different job this time, and it just keeps going and going and going. You don't get a rest. You can tell it's a Sunday night, and I'm dreading going back to work tomorrow.
Even the bit with the Mamonji, which we're told are not conscious, they're this sort of like lovable, life-bringing thing that like can keep you alive through the desert and do all this stuff. But then they just carve them up, right? It's just like this. Like it's like taking the idea of like a food animal and just like cranking it through the roof. And they're presented so sympathetically. And then in the very next scene, someone is eating what is very obviously a part of them, right? Like in a tavern, they're like passing around bowls of them. in this life you're the one that eats, and in the next life we carve you up and we use you for like building materials, or we eat you, or whatever it is. The way that that happens in every story with the reincarnation, and just kind of like knowing like at some point you're going to be on the lower end of this. Yeah. And that's where most of the perspectives come from.
And another great disturbing scene with the worker in part 1, where the worker believes they're female for one part. They've been using male pronouns up until that point. And they're like, oh, wait, my stomach is inflating. I feel pregnant. I must be female. And you think, okay, what are they pregnant with? And they're pregnant with themselves. Mm-hmm. They give birth to themselves and killing their old self in the process. And then the new self, after a couple of days of maturation, gets back to work.
Back to the office.
Yeah. Like, I'm sure if I gave birth to myself, my boss would be calling me on the team Slack to be like, okay, you've given birth to yourself. You come on, back to the office. You got emails to write.
Oh dear. Yeah, it's good. It's strange. It's sharp. Have you by chance read Yas, the Cuban science fiction author?
Yeah, I don't believe I have. No, I haven't actually. No.
He's got a bunch of stuff that's been translated, but he has a novel called Planet for Rent. That I think is actually also a mosaic. But I was just thinking of it similarly, of taking a really like gonzo body horror approach to, again, just taking this allegory so far. And that one, it's that a far more powerful alien civilization has basically rented Earth and just uses it for like sex work and like chemical dump, basically.
That is probably what we deserve.
Right. But it's like so on the nose for what it's doing, and talking about Cuba's relationship with the U.S. It almost sort of transcends the allegory, because it's just so weird. It's just so over the top. It is so much like bloody, bodily kind of focus on that idea. And this all throughout, the way that it has this big idea about work and how we do it, and tying it to the body and how we use bodies like ourselves and others, and that the natural world here is kind of like one and the same with those bodies. It's such a dense picture of it. And I just love all the strange little, in the classroom where they draw on the skin boards. So like instead of blackboards, they have like a thing of living skin that they like make welts on. They like scratch it. And then like someone is in charge of like applying lotion to it at the end of the class to like soothe it again. Like every single chapter is just packed with this constant use and abuse of other living things. And as you go on, you get, as a reader, at least I did, more and more concern that there might be a person in there, in that thing that's being abused.
Yeah, which is, going back to the political readings of this, it's every time you have a coffee, there's someone being abused behind it. If you've ever eaten shrimp, you've eaten something harvested by a literal slave. If you go to Dubai, then you're going to buildings made by slaves. Mm-hmm. Just being around, going through the world, we get so much blood on our hands. And it is like every time we write, we're writing on someone's skin. Every time we eat, we're eating something that used to be alive. Well, literally, every time if we eat meat, then we're eating something that used to be alive and has feelings. And in the case of pigs and cows, are probably quite intelligent and have friends and emotions. I think Dempow Torishima has some sort of like kind of animal rights bent to him. It's especially true in the fourth book, which is about like a cattle drive and the Mamonji, but it's also true kind of whenever people eat. I think every time people eat, they eat some sort of meat. They eat a product of a living creature. I don't think there's like vegetarian dishes in this book. I don't think there's plants. Oh, no, that's coral. I guess that's a kind of plant. But
there's like the weird fungus things that grow in the
there's always fungus, because it's weird fiction. There's got to be fungus.
Got to be fungus. I love I don't have a point about this, but I just love the reverberator. They're like televisual phones, but it's the predatory fungus that mimics the face of the other person. And if you like forget about it, it will eat you. But it's just like this, I'm just picturing like, you open the phone and just like this like blobby mushroom face of the person you're talking to comes out of it. It's fantastic. It's so good. The neurofungus. Yeah.
And in part 3, there's a lot of stuff that will eat you if you like have a chip in your exoskeleton. Just like they have I think they're called bug baths. Where it's just like, instead of washing yourself, you just get bugs eating the dirt on you. And if you have like a small little thing in your chitin, then they'll just get inside you and eat your brain.
It has all those little bits about the political groups. I think they call them like tribes of different insects, some of whom are just allowed to like set lethal traps to eat people. And as long as they like put up a little sign like, hey, there's a lethal trap somewhere in here, it's fine. There's the one who are like both slightly endangered and have political clout. So they're allowed to like the literal femme fatale, right? The females are allowed to like implant their eggs in anyone they catch and it'll eat you from the inside out. Like, but you know, they've got the clout, so.
Yeah, it's I really like part 3. I like noir, I like detective fiction in general, like spy stories in general, and seeing them done in such a bizarre way is really, really fun and satisfying. And having a main character who's invisible a lot of the time, like literally invisible to most of the tribes.
You know, noir often has that sort of like almost slapstick, you know, they're not the best fighter, they keep getting like beaten up and knocked down by some thug. And our narrator here keeps getting like limbs ripped off and like his exoskeleton smashed open and like literally parts of his brain like pried out, and they got to put something in there to replace it. It's funny. Like it's body horror, but it's also funny at the same time. It's so extreme.
Yeah. And then like a literal femme fatale arrives, and it is it's very funny in lots of places. We're making it sound like constant gross out, but no, it's quite fun.
It is gross, but it's funny too. I kept thinking about Delaney's bit about how language in science fiction specifically can have these like really abrupt, like jarring, interesting, like estranging effects. And the one in, I think it was the first one I noticed in that chapter, was our detective hero is sort of like lying in rest. He's kind of sick, and there's a party, like a parade going on outside, and it says, "The cheering grew louder, grating on my elbows." And it's sort of like the first clue you have that something weird is going on. And then all throughout that, you keep just getting these, it's not weird to him, it's not weird to anybody, but these descriptions of how his body and how his senses work. Ooh, another good neologism, the sentences, the scent-enses, because they write with pheromones. Yeah, it's good.
Again, it's these are giant bugs living on the back of a snail. Things should be much more different than they are. And yet capitalism persists. It doesn't go anywhere. It's like we're just stuck on that. So of course they're repeating these like cliches from Earth because they're just stuck there forever. So they're always going to be detectives and femme fatales and that. They're always going to be playing out these stories.
The thing he's trying to figure out is like this weird corporate malfeasance that ties in strangely into like basically like a military and industrial snafu, right? They just have to like abandon the snail at the end.
And kind of the origin of their species, the question of speciation. Like, why do we have all these different things of bugs? Is that because there's a pancestor, another portmanteau, who all the bugs came from? And yes, there is, but you could kind of only get to them in this, like, it seems that the planet is like tidally locked, so there's a part that's always getting sunlight, and there's like a sunset zone. You have to go into the sunlight area in order to find these pancestors, and that burns you alive, but fine, you get reincarnated, whatever.
That whole sequence where we sort of like dream our way through like an unknown number of generations, like mutating to survive the heat, is really, really good and really trippy and strange. Let's we've been talking here. Let's take a quick break. I want to come back, and there's lots more to say about this. So I'm just going to grab a drink of water. I will be back in like 30 seconds. All right, we are back. We are still talking about Dempow Torishima's Sisyphean, very strange, fun novel. I don't know, we've covered so much. I'm not sure where to go next. I did want, maybe this will lead us in. There's this line in the fourth story, which, as you said, might actually be the earliest written, but where towards the end, when things are really breaking down, there's some sort of like reincarnation, nanotech, VR merging thing going on. And We talked earlier about how this is not a completist world building thing, and it's doing this sort of frustrating world building things. And we catch these glimpses and these snatches of conversation of people explaining what's going on, but they're all sort of operating in different realities to begin with, so it's sort of none of it makes sense to anybody else. But one of them says that how we got into this situation is that the informational management and patronage they provided, this talking about this sort of higher level being, let people enjoy lives of incredible, even perverse convenience. And that's sort of like has led to this like sea of broken down nanotech and this like, this weird torrent of indecipherable dreams that are passing through people. So yeah, dug it. You were going to take us in a certain direction. We didn't get there before the break.
This is going to make probably about 90% of people instantly click off. Deleuze and Guattari, names to conjure by there. So they are French, Italian theorists, post-structuralists. If you know what those words mean, you probably have a good idea of how they operate. I don't want to go into like a whole thing about them because they are incredibly difficult to get into, deliberately so. They're from a certain part of continental theory where people felt the best way to explain the ideas was to kind of embody them in prose. So if they're going to explain things that are a little crazy, that don't quite make sense, that connect into a million different ways, then the best way to do that is by writing something that reads kind of like Finnegan's Wake. They're very big on Joyce. That era has kind of ended. People kind of found that a little passé. Like by about the 90s, people were, especially today, people are back to talking like normal people about things, even if they have to use like very difficult philosophical language to explain things. One of their kind of big ideas is deterritorialization and reterritorialization. That kind of links into what I was saying about the kind of constant recurring of capitalism in this, constant recurring of just like 20th century Japanese culture in a generation ship 1 billion miles from Earth in maybe 1 million years in the future. Why does this stuff keep recurring? One of D&G's big concepts is kind of the deterritorialization, which is our lives are structured by these like codes, and they're put into different territories. You're supposed to do this here. You're supposed to act this way here. You can't act the way you act in the office, the way you act when you're out with your friends after. You can't act that way in a funeral later. Everything has a territory, a place. Your body is different territories. There's a whole body without organs thing, which probably very relevant to Sisyphean, but way too complex. Basically, the whole world is territories. But then someone will come along and deterritorialize something. They'll find you can relate to something in a different way. You can tell a joke at a funeral and it still is a funeral, One of the things that capitalism is very good at is reterritorializing things. So say you get punk rock music, great deterritorialization. A pop band like the Sex Pistols can also be this like nasty anarchic rock band. Then it can all be reterritorialized into, Avril Lavigne decades later. Everything can be broken down, brought back into capitalism. It can be rendered safe. It can be turned into profit. That keeps happening in Sisyphean over and over, usually in very literal ways to people's bodies. When people are reincarnated, they are literally reterritorialized into a certain, okay, this is your history, this is your personality, this is your job in the world, this is who you are. You are now my dad, who is an astrologer or something. There's no willingness to let people just be whatever they are in this particular place. You have to be in a certain box. Things have got to make sense. It has to be a territory, like on a map. Yeah, this keeps recurring again and again as a motif throughout Sisyphean, to the point where I genuinely think that Dempow Torishima has read Deleuze Guitarri. I think it's ideas he has, unless he's like just got this incredible like intuitive grasp of late capitalism. Maybe he does. There are plenty of people, other writers and artists who do. Quite a lot of them in Japan. It seems to be kind of like a very receptive place for these ideas, probably because of what I said earlier with the kind of materialist history of Japan being very much constantly reterritorialized in every attempt to break out into something new. another person who's going to make all your listeners run away. Nick Land. Yeah, you can put some like thunder strikes in the background, some scary music and stuff.
I don't know. I feel like we should play some like clown music or something just to get it.
Yeah, you should, because he is a total clown. But yeah, he was someone who's very, very heavily influenced by Deleuze Guittari, probably more than any other thinker. The way he talks about capitalism as this engine of deterritorialization, this thing that is constantly breaking things down, making new markets, changing everything. Kind of the way we've seen in the last couple of years with AI. It's now like the idea that a computer is not your friend, it's a tool. That used to be the territory. The territory of your computer used to have the rule, no, you can't go on here and ask it to be your therapist.
Right. Can't be my girlfriend. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And now that's completely been destroyed. And it's now unthinkable to millions of people that their computer isn't their friend. And when ChatGPT updated their algorithm and it was less cloying and it was less sentimental, it was people got so sad because their new territory had just been changed yet again. They had to relate to something in a completely new way again and again. Whereas Deleuze and Guattari have this kind of idea that we can there's kind of like an emancipatory potential in like freeing ourselves from these territories of, we can constantly be going more and making things more different and being different people and changing ourselves and creating new things and talking different, dressing different and having different genders and having no gender at all, relating to things totally different ways. Nick Land has a very dark, very Lovecraftian, like deliberately Lovecraftian, he brings up Lovecraft a lot. Idea of capitalism is just this horrible thing from the future that is eating us, that is like taking all our ideas and all our desires and productivity and is just devouring it, like when Cthulhu comes out of the waves. It's kind of like the Great Dust Plague in Sisyphean. There's this like kind of grey goo nanotech thing that's just breaking everything down into nothingness. Like everyone's bodies, minds, everything about them just gets broken down into just more grey goo. Land sees that as a good thing. Mm-hmm. He would be surfing on the Great Dust Plague if he could. He's probably a bit old for it now, but he is a very influential person in Silicon Valley, and they're really trying to recuperate him as a serious thinker nowadays. And he is not a serious guy, but Andreessen Horowitz seemed to think so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it provides the cover for, right? And it provides like...
It was cover for being an asshole.
Yeah. And in a way that is harder to tell immediately compared to like, not just like simple libertarianism, right? Which just says like, it's okay and even virtuous to be greedy if you read Ayn Rand, right? But like, it's really easy to read Ayn Rand and see how dumb it is, right? It's much harder to read Nick Land and immediately say what's wrong, just because it's so big and complex.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's maybe more effective cover in some way.
And some of the things that he kind of spins off, things like the idea of like a unitary self, the kind of Aristotelian idea of you've got this one self that's you, and you're always you, and you have reason, and you want to like maximize your own happiness and potential, and strive always for the good. And if you don't do that, that's because you've made a mistake, and you just need to be corrected. Deleuze and Guattari completely break with that. A lot of people have broken with that. Nietzsche broke with that, and then Land is like, yeah, good. I'm glad that we don't have. We can't think of ourselves as subjects anymore. We don't need to. It's fine to just kill 1 billion people for a 1% increase in profit. I think Sisyphean is more Deleuze Guattarian than that. It's not nihilistic like he is. It still believes in suffering. It still believes like I think it's very humanistic for a book about giant bugs. It locates suffering as a really, really important factor in the world, probably the most important. And is very attuned to the fact that the Namus Machina, the Mamonji, the worker, that the central fact of their life is that they suffer. And the fact that they're in this system, which we realize is actually just capitalism, doesn't excuse that. It's not. It doesn't make it good that people are eating babies, which is literally what they're doing in the third thing.
There's something. There's a bigger thing here that's I probably don't have time to think through on the fly right here, but about how often we sort of accept the analogy that capitalism is like biological evolution in its sort of like relentless drive to like perfect itself and evolve. But like capitalism and biological evolution are actually two like wildly different things, right?
Very much so, yeah.
And there are different ways. There are many different ways to read on, allegories or metaphors of what we could take away from how biological evolution works. And this has them so close together, and where we get those, right? There's no vision here of how to escape, right?
Absolutely.
Point of this book is not to like, oh, and at the end everything's better, right? They don't see a way out to a utopian anarchic thing at the end. Spoiler. I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about this related to VanderMeer's work, maybe particularly in the like dead astronauts kind of stuff he's done.
Yeah.
Where even though, I think that's a horrific book, and it's not a particular, it's a book with a lot of horror in it, and it's a book that is not particularly hopeful, but there's something in there about trying to like split how life works from how capitalism works, that like there's a little bit of daylight in there, that we can take a little more from the side that is taking other living things seriously, which is a thread through this that is sort of like a constant sort of at least temporary reprieve, is when two people just really, or two entities, they're not always people, just really sort of like see each other and acknowledge each other and aren't trying to devour each other. There's these little moments.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have some thought there about trying to split biology from capitalism, and not to say that we are just biology or we are just biologically determined either. But there's different ways to read speciation, and that speciation doesn't have to always mean deterritorialization and new markets, right? That it can mean other ways of adapting.
Yeah, I think it's not even biology; it's like life, like capital L life, and a million different things that can mean. It can literally mean biology and bacteria growing into fish that grow into monkeys that grow into us. It can also mean like just being alive, like the part of your life that is your life, which is like talking on podcasts, listening to podcasts, going out with your friends, meeting people, falling in love, that life. And Deleuze Guittari, they're incredibly difficult to read. I don't recommend the majority of people should even read their books. I think they should read books about their books. But they're ultimately on the side of life, capital L life. They're vitalists. They one of the recurring metaphors in their work is fungal networks, mycelia, rhizomes, like you'd have with a potato, because it just makes connections. It doesn't have a central thing that it's supposed to do. It's just connecting everywhere. It's deconnecting everywhere. Whereas a tree, the kind of arborescent way of thinking about things is there's a central idea, everything branches off from that. One of the things they talk about a lot is the Oedipus complex. Yeah, everything in Freud is Oedipus complex in the middle. Everything else happens to you is a result of the Oedipus complex. Whereas their kind of schizoanalysis, they call it, is maybe it's not you that you want to kill your dad. Maybe it's other stuff. It could be a billion different things. And that's actually closer to Freud's earlier work. It kind of comes up a lot in Sisyphean. Like, these people's lives are arborescent. They're structured around the central fact of capitalism. Everything they do is capitalistic. There's people who eat, the people who eat, and there are people who are eaten. No matter how weird their lives get, it is always centrally around this one thing. And the emancipatory potential there is that, you can just be different and weird, and you can make connections that weren't there before. You don't have to have this one central pillar to your life. It can be anything. And the kind of friction in the book between these like places like the Castel Notoris, where there's like a million different types of sentient life, and they could relate to each other and hybridize in all these different ways, but they're still like a city, and they have a ministry of war, and they have jobs and money and all that stuff. They don't have to do any of that. It's just they've decided this is the central pillar of our life. This is the trunk of our tree. Everything else branches off of that. There's a point where Hanashibe is remembering a time when he was a child and he was very upset. He went crying to his grandfather, and his grandfather, to console him, says, there, you're not always necessarily you. I love that line so much. That's going to get... I want to get that in Japanese so I can get tattooed on me.
That's good.
Because it's right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when I go to the office, I'm a totally different person to the person I am now. I never talk about Deleuze Guitarri in the office. If I had to go to a funeral and give a speech about, say, knock on wood, one of my parents dies or something. No, not knock on wood, they don't die. I have to give like a eulogy for someone. I'm going to be a totally different person. I'm not always me. There is no real me, right? There's not a thing that I always am. No real core, like a tree, like the tree and its roots and its branches. There's just connections I make. I connect with a book. I connect with, in capitalism, I connect with all these consumer products. I connect with people and they influence me in turn. That's more alive than the arborescent way of seeing things, which I think is, Sisyphean talks about it. I think it talks about it a lot. I'd like someone with a lot more chops with D&G than me. I'm very much an amateur at them. I don't think you can be, I've read them for like the last 20 years. I still feel like a total novice. And I'd like someone who is a bit more of a professor level to think about them with this book. I mean, I'd like more Dempow Torishima books to be translated because this is like one of about 6 he's written, and apparently it's not even his best. There's this other one, I'll find the name, just in case there's some rogue translator out there listening to this. Kunadete no Neferetsen came out in 2023, and apparently that's his masterwork. It's a spherical world where people live on different settlements, and the world is circled by 5 suns, and one of the suns goes out. He's like one of the greatest writers in the country at the moment, but we've got like one of his books that came out from a fucking manga publisher. So yeah, translators listening to this, if any of you are good at Japanese, and I'd be really good at Japanese, and you want a challenge, then Kandete no Furetsen, get cracking, because I'll buy it. You got one customer right there.
You've got 2 for sure. Gareth, thanks so much for coming on. Thanks so much for putting this book in front of me. This is a blast. Highly recommend this to folks. Before we go, do you have anything you want to plug? Any place people can find you online? Do you want to tell us in brief about this book that we hear that you are working on?
Sure. Okay, so best place to find me is Blue Sky, ex-refugee, as most people are nowadays. I should stop saying refugee. It's disrespectful to refugees. I shouldn't say that. I'm on kind of hiatus from Death Sentence, but it's been left in very capable hands with Eden, who's been on the show before, and Langdon, who should be on the show like 10 times because he's absolute genius. The book I'm working on is called Just Plain Evil. Let's see if I can remember the subtitle. Cruelty, Extinction, and the Right. Cruelty, Extinction, and the Authoritarian Mind. It argues that cruelty, sadism is the central organizing principle of everything from conservatism to the furthest, craziest reaches of fascism. It uses very Deleuze Guittari approved methods to do that. I've been reading a lot of neuroscience journals. Large parts of it are fiction. I was trained as a fiction writer, not as a non-fiction writer. It's a kind of wild ride. It's very me. It's very ADHD. It goes all over the place. I joked on the podcast we mentioned earlier, Blood Work, that my autistic special interest is evil. And if you imagined a book someone with that particular autistic special interest would produce, then this would be it. Should be coming out next year, maybe the year after. All good bookshops, preferably an independent bookshop, not Amazon.
That sounds fantastic. I hope you are mentally armored as you're walking those lanes.
God, no, I'm raw. I cry so many times reading this stuff. You should have seen the research I've had to do, honestly.
Gareth, thanks so much again for joining. This was great. People, if you are not listening to Death Sentence, go back and listen to those. Gareth, thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
A Meal of Thorns is a podcast from the Ancillary Review of Books, an online magazine founded to address the radical possibilities of criticism, with a focus on speculative fiction, world literature, and utopian impulses. Go to ancillaryreviewofbooks.org for regular reviews, essays, interviews, and more. Our opening poem is by Bartra Hari, translated by John Bruff. Our music is by Giselle Gabriel Garcia. Our artwork is by Rob Patterson at The Ratio Farm. If you'd like to support the podcast and the ancillary review of books, congrats! You may be good. A few different ways you can do that. You can join our Patreon. Throw us a couple bucks a month to keep the podcast and the magazine sustainable. You can hang out with us on Discord, and we've got a few other perks on the way. If you're interested in a book we mentioned on the podcast, buying from the bookshop link in our show notes or at the ARB website gets us a cut. It helps immensely if you just help get the word out about the show. Leaving a review, commenting, or sharing on your platform of choice, that really helps. And it's nice to know you're listening. Questions, suggestions, elaborate compliments, drop us an email at mealofthorns@gmail.com, and you can also follow us on Blue Sky for however long that stays cool, and probably slightly past that. Okay, one more note about this show. Gareth and I were talking, and apparently we weren't recording through a long section we had talking about this, but Gareth was recently a guest on the podcast Bloodwork, which is a show about the economies of violence. It is really, really good. It is funny. It's kind of horrifying. It's very informative. It feels important in a way that I hesitate to say about any podcast, but I think I will say it. So just want to make sure, check that out. Again, it's called Bloodwork. I'll put a link to Gareth's episode in the notes. Okay, next time, we've got Premi Mohammed joining us to talk about Gene Wolfe's The Fifth Head of Kerberos. We've got a lot of other exciting stuff coming up. We've got Dan Hartland, Ian Mon, Laura Zatz, and more. A couple of special episodes I'm hoping to do this summer. Check the website if you'd like to read ahead. As always, thanks for listening, and stay critical out there. We don't have Marmite, but we do have small pockets of Anglophiles here and there, so you can buy it at my local grocery store.
Oh yeah. I guess you can get in those like British theme stores, but I hate it. But sorry, go on.